After studying this module, you shall be able to know about recovery of evidence from grave. You will learn about the steps followed to carry to recovery of forensic evidence from a grave. A multidisciplinary approach is adopted for investigation of a grave. This approach helps experts to carry out a well-managed team framework. Archaeology helps in understanding buried environments. A forensic archaeologist extracts out buried evidences which might be present in recoverable and recordable form. Sometimes it is necessary to search the area near the grave to collect more evidences. In case of older graves, it is little difficult to find evidences, but there are chances that some evidences still survive in a recoverable condition. The background analysis of the site should be done to analyze the type of soil, various plants and animals, insects, etc. For example, soft tissue will survive long in case of waterlogged clay environment, and saponification of the body may occur, whereas in case of gravel or free draining chalk, process of decaying or skeletonization is fast. To decide the best recovery strategies, logistics and for informing which type of equipment or material might be needed, the site background analysis is done. Establishment of test pit help in distinguishing between the natural soil and the soil which was accidentally introduced through a vehicle or clothes during crime and natural substrates which are present in the soil. Now let us see the excavation, that is the information and logistics. The process of excavation of gravesite will depend on the case. For example, in some grave may have been located as a part of the search for a missing person, where post interval is known, and in some cases the site might have been located by the member of the public without any information about the period of decomposition or even the name of the victim. Every forensic case is unique, and greater experience the archaeologists have, the more likely is that he or she will be able to recognize the wider implication of the evidential requirement, role of specialist archaeological methods required, etc. The information required and the objective of investigation will also determine the approach followed. It will not only adhere the archaeological purity, all the objective should be transparent. For instances, the investigative officer may keep some of the information with himself for very strategic reasons which may affect the archaeological strategy. Keeping this in mind, the archaeologist should ask the appropriate question which relate to the case, local factors and the time intervals involved. Now let us see the equipment requirement. Most of the archaeologists have their own excavation equipment and other technical equipment such as GPS and EDM. Better serving equipment and skilled personnel are present with the police these days. Well borers are difficult and might need to be purchased specially. Minimum of 2 borers are needed. List of equipment are brought in advance by most scene managers. To manage and use the equipment, archaeologists need to be present. Archaeologists should be present at the scene with all necessary equipment to be self-sufficient, including the basic items like buckets. Some of the equipment will never be used again, as they might be used to collect evidences or might become contaminated, lost or rigged. From the point of view of the contingency, it is also preferable to maintain a stock of variously sized, sealed, finds type bags and sample bottles. Most scene of crime vans are well stocked, but there may be several incidents running simultaneously and facilities may be stretched. For collection of microscopic evidences and pollens and spores, containers are needed. Clean or new containers should always be used to avoid any remote possibility of contamination. Best practice is maintain an equipment log that records the cleaning of equipment after each use, that is using distilled or deionized water, and the storage of items in a clean and secure location. Now let us see verification of grave. After assessment of wider area, verification of grave should be done. Depending on the reliability of the information known, appropriate method is used. Different strategies are used according to the situation. For example, grave noticed by a person or a grave found during the search. If the wider area will have different strategies of verification. Proper photography and videography records of the scene have to be done before carrying out the invasive technique. The recording should be undertaken in presence of crime personnel. Careful cleaning and recording of surface area is done. Edges are outlined and a narrow trench is excavated across the subject area. To find edges of possible grave cut, this trench should be of maximum of 50 cm but need to be extended across the beyond suspected area. All graves are not rectangular or appropriately equal to the height of the adult. In some cases, an unpredictability murders often result in grave constructions as a scoop with varied dimension and shape. Burial of bodies can be in any position. Sometimes the body might be incompletely, whereas in some cases it may be complete but disarticulated. Depending upon the equipment and method used to dig a grave, considerable amount of time might be required, even by a stronger and healthy individual. To bury the body deeper and securely, digging of the grave can even be more time consuming and the chances of being observed increases. It is difficult to dig a grave or in a gravels as the sites becomes fluid and maintaining the depth of the contour can be difficult. Similarly, issues can be faced in cases of alluvial sites. Excavation in such area is also difficult. In such areas, the grave cuts might be indistinct even if is recent. This demonstrates the importance of test pit in order to analyze similar characteristics and indicators of disturbance. When a part of a grave is cut, many subsequent burials will be readily apparent when it known as a tonnage method. This method should be performed so that loss of evidence is minimum. During simple search, in case of human remains are found, the search develops into major incident which may lead to the increased funding of prioritization of the resource. Now let us see the excavation strategy. When human remains are found, then the scene is secured and no further work is carried out unless the pathologist is present or agreeable. Permission to excavate further can be taken on telephonic conversation if there is a mutual understanding between archaeologist and the pathologist. Such an arrangement is a mutual advantage. It allows the archaeologist to excavate and records the remainder of the grave down to the body at the professionally acceptable speed, and it minimizes the time the pathologist has to wait at the scene in order for the body to be recovered in full. The interval helps the archaeologist to plan a recovery strategy on the basis of various factors such as soil profile, etc. Specific excavation techniques are selected before excavation. Recording system is set up to identity, EDM or mutual system. A baseline is established and context sheet planning borders are prepared. Sediment or soil layer might be present on grave or its adjacent land surface. Excavation of these can be done individually under ideal condition and can be checked for many material, advanced evidences or biological entomological reasons. These layers might not have any significance with crime, but it may contain materials that help determine the date before which the burial occurred. With the intention of concealing the grave, it is possible that culprit might have deposited such material intentionally. Therefore, any evidence regarding the data of deposition, nature of place of origin is considered important. After removing these layers of the top of the grave will become apparent and clearly visible. The material inside the grave might be different in color, compactness, moist or dryness, etc. Local condition and features of burial will be reflected by the degree of differences. Experienced archaeologists with proper equipment should excavate a grave. During initial testing, half sectioning can be removed more rigorously during initial testing. Half sectioning is the best way in most situations. It helps in determining whether that the feature is a grave or not without removing the whole fill. Numbering of all material should be done. Since archaeology is a destructive process, or numbering of material is necessary, it is useful for a court and investigation authority. Once all the evidentiary material is collected and the remains are exposed as much as possible, then the body can be taken out. This is the major point of excavation process, as the main evidence, that is the human remains, have been revealed and needs to be recorded through photographs, documentation, etc. Till the process of excavation is complete, nothing can be disturbed, just like any other crime scene. Now let us see identifying evidence. During the process of creating a grave, 3 steps are followed: digging, deposition and infilling. These points should be kept in mind and reverse should be followed in the process of recovery. Integrity of the grave should be maintained during excavation. The necessity is that during excavation, where practically possible, every care must be taken to ensure that the sides of the grave right down to the base are revealed and maintained. If the care not taken, the process is prone to the exudation and contamination from surrounding layers, or may lead to the insufficient collection of evidence, especially above the base of the grave, below the body, where the materials such as coins, buttons, etc. can be collected after decomposition of the body. Clues about mode of digging, direction of digging and tools used to determine from the grave. In case of non-criminal context of burial, grave cut, fill and evidences on the around the body are important and serve as the main evidence available for investigation. Potential of evidence can be realized only when excavation is performed by experienced experts. Evidences will be examined. A few questions need to be answered, such as how was the grave dug and with implements. Was the grave dug in a hurry, or was it carefully prepared? Is there evidence of grave being left upon before burial of the body? Is there evidence of post-mortem interval, etc.? Now let us see the collecting and reporting evidence. After completion of the excavation work, the work done by archaeologists moves into post-excavation mode, just like the excavation. After the completion of event, it is necessary to produce a written report or statement. Archaeologists will be the expert witness and all the evidence are collected and tied together. Crime scene persons has complete the necessary paperwork before proceeding to another case. Dictaphones or written notes, anything can be used to maintain the records. Working at a crime scene can be stressful and it is all too easy to forget the obvious when under pressure. Further, having a count and page numbered system ensures that the complete record will be submitted and cannot be doctored either by addition or omission at the point of disclosure. Essentially, this strategy is back covering as well as efficient. Less records can be criticized as being an inadequate record and thus can be considered as unprofessional, whereas over-recording exposes it is cross-examination. The correct balance of records, it is important so that objective observation and record can be rapidly transferred into simple narrative. Keeping things simple is best. The file created by archaeologists will be in written form, duly signed and in a simple narration which describes the complete process from beginning to end. Digging of grave, use of grave and filling of grave, everything will be outlined in this report. This will be presented in along with the records maintained regarding all the exhibits. All statements should be straightforward without excessive hypothesis and all main elements should be mentioned about what happened, the timing and the process undertaken, the reasons for undertaking the process and outcomes. Now let us summarize what we have learned in this module. Archaeology helps in understanding buried environments. Forensic archaeologists extract out buried evidences which might be present in recoverable and recordable form. Establishment of test pit help in distinguishing between the natural soil and the soil which have accidentally introduced through a vehicle or a clothes during the crime, and the natural substrate which are present in the soil. Every forensic case is unique, and greater experience the archaeologists have, the more likely it is that he or she will be able to recognize wider implications of the evidential requirement, role of specialist, archaeological methods required, etc. Archaeologists should be present at the scene with all necessary equipment to be self-sufficient, including the basic items of the buckets. For collection of microscopic evidence and pollen and spores, containers are needed. Clean or new container should always be used to avoid any remote possibility of contamination. Careful cleaning and recording of the surface area is done. Edges are outlined and a narrow trench is excavated across the suspected area. When a part of grave is cut, and any subsequent burials will be readily apparent, and then it is known as pondage method. This method should be preferred so that loss of evidence is minimum. Recording system is set up to identify EDM or manual system. A baseline is established and context sheet planning, boards, etc. are prepared. Any evidence regarding the date of deposition, nature of place of origin is considered important. During initial testing, half sectioning can be removed more rigorously during initial testing. Half sectioning is best way. In most situations, it helps in determining whether that the feature is a grave or not without removing the whole fill. Numbering of all material should be done. During the process of creating a grave, 3 steps are followed, that is digging, deposition and infilling. These points should be kept in mind, and reverse should be followed in the process of recovery. If this care is not taken, the process is prone to accusations of contamination from surrounding layers or may lead to insufficient collection of evidence, especially above the base of the grave below the body, where materials such as coins, buttons, etc. can be collected after decomposition of body. Crime scene person has to complete the necessary paperwork before proceeding to the another case. Dictaphones or return notes, anything can be used to maintain the records. Working at a crime scene can be stressful, and it is all too easy forget the obvious when under pressure. The file created by archaeologists will be returned from duly signed and in simple narration which describe the complete process from beginning to end. Digging of grave, use of grave and filling of grave, everything will be outlined in that report. All statements should be straightforward without excessive hypothesis, and all the main elements should be mentioned about what happened, the timing and process undertaken, the reasons for undertaking the process and the outcomes.